And it's just in time.
Wow. They must have been in an upright position and now they're just collapsing.
After years of neglect, many of Sicily's historic mummies face the danger of the rot and decay.
Called Giovanni Battista Racuia. He was a priest here and he died in January 1873 at the age of 65.
Many of the mummies are hundreds of years old. Yet somehow they're remarkably well preserved. A body dead this long isn't supposed to exist. 1 second past death, the force preserving the body falters. Once the heart stops, the forces of decomposition are unleashed. Lactic acid builds in major muscle groups, stiffening them into rigor mortis. Cells break down. Enzymes are freed and become flesh eaters. Bacteria moves without restriction, devouring body tissues. On the outside, insects arrive to finish the job, reducing human flesh to dust in less than a year. But not in Sicily. For some reason, ashes to ashes, dust to dust did not apply here. Among the first clues Dario uncovers, the earliest bodies to be preserved as mummies are all priests and monks. The discovery sends Dario to Sicily's archives. He finds reports claiming that in the late 1500s, monks were discovered in tombs miraculously intact. Even more significant are indications that mummification began as a custom operating behind closed doors among a little-known order of the Catholic Church, the Capuchins. They were a splinter group of Franciscan friars that believed in living in extreme austerity, wearing hooded robes or cappuccio, the mark of a hermit. They were the traditionalists of their day, and a feature of their devotion was an emphasis on venerating the dead. How a small group of monks in Sicily eventually became mummy makers is unclear. They left no written records, but perhaps it all stems from the Capuchins' missionary travel, a keen fervor to take the ministry to the common people, even to tribal groups in the New World.
When the Capuchins went on missions, especially in Mesoamerica, the ethnic cultures there introduced them to the ways they processed dead bodies.
Across the globe, civilizations preserved the dead to worship their ancestors. The Chinchorro in South America practiced mummification over 7,000 years ago. Later on, the Egyptians perfected the art. The Capuchins may have been receptive to mummification practices because they too revered the dead. Catholic ritual has long included sacred images of the dead. And there may have been another factor, the Bible itself. In the to John, it says, Nicodemus came, headed deep into the cool ground under churches, lined with moisture-absorbing stone, and ventilated to minimize temperature fluctuation. A dead monk entombed within these places would have been naturally subjected to just the right conditions. 3 months to a year, and the result could be a mummy. In a church in the medieval town of Savoca, the scientists descend into a subterranean crypt in search of clues to how the Capuchins learned to arrest the body's natural decay. In addition to tombs full of mummies, they're finding elaborate preparation rooms with wall niches and racks built specifically for drying out cadavers.
They were just put in here and sat like this and probably staying here for, I don't know, a couple of months.
Yeah.
And the liquid would drain into the hole, which is at my back.
Yeah, and if the fluid would stay in the body would completely decay.
Decompose. Oh, just slowly.
As Dario and Albert are discovering in the Savoca tombs, not only were the monks preserved, but the Capuchins wanted these bodies displayed.
He was the first one who was put in here, and the others came later. But it was something special to be put in here.
He is the oldest identifiable mummy. He's called Giuseppe Nicotina, and he was an abbot. He died in 1795.
His face is frozen in what appears to be a scream.
That's only an effect of desiccation. It wasn't actually suffering.
Some people think this is the last expression they had when they died, but it's just the effect of the desiccation. It has nothing to do with what happened in his last seconds of his life.
But if their investigation into the mummies is to go any further, the scientists will need a closer view, inside the bodies themselves. In the tiny hilltop village of Piraino, Sicily, inside the town church, beneath the altar where Mass is held every Sunday, is a crypt containing 26 mummies. They've been here for hundreds of years. Armed with 21st century technology, the latest in portable X-ray scanners, Dario and his team have arrived to examine the mummies, hoping there are clues still inside the bodies about how they lived and died, and how they were preserved. But before they can make their X-ray pictures, the team runs into a problem. 21st century science tripped up by 16th century architecture. The passageway leading to the crypt is extremely steep and narrow.
Degree of dental wear.
It's very thin, so maybe he had an abscess here at the root. Here we have some arthritis of the cervical spine.
Within the mummy are the bones of an old man, someone who lived a surprisingly long life for the times, well into his 50s or longer. Radiologist Steffi Panzer spends most of the year X-raying living patients in a trauma center in southern Germany. Working on the bones of the dead isn't that different. In fact, they're finding that the quality of life for these mummies was unexpectedly high. Analysis of bone samples reveals the priests enjoyed a diet rich in seafood protein, as well as grains. So rich, the X-rays show evidence of gout, diabetes, and obesity. Far different than the austere lifestyle of the Capuchins when Sicilian mummification began. It's evidence that preservation practices are changing. No longer a clandestine custom among a small sect of monks. Now it's church leaders with affluent lifestyles that are the ones being mummified.
He has a necklace. Look, see?
A necklace suddenly stands out from the gray contours of rib and muscle.
It might just be inside. That's it. It's like a rosary.
Like an Egyptian mummy adorned with an amulet, many of these priests were dressed for the journey into the hereafter with the rosary beads they held so close in life. The mummy suggests that by the early 1800s, mummification in Sicily was expanding. Yet they don't appear to be preserved any differently than the older natural mummies the scientists have seen. They aren't helping the team understand how a mummy of the quality of Rosalia eventually emerged. its way by human hands. Of course, undertaking a full forensic exam on the body of a saint is no simple checkup. Normally, the dark dominion of Sicily's mummified dead stays hidden underground. body less gaunt. Even facial and scalp hair is retained. As much as we've seen Sicilian mummy-making advance, from special drying rooms used by the monks to bodily incision,
and they would do anything to preserve her body. This is why they called Professor Salafia, who was the most famous embalmer of Palermo. and who would accept to preserve Rosalia in the best possible way.
Now, nearly a century. Later, they boost the intensity of the X-ray beams.
Look.
And then they have their answer.
Oh, it's much better.
Oh, much better. Look at
Oh
this.
my God. Oh my God, what's that?
Can't believe it. It's a
It's
lung.
still preserved?
Yes.
And you see here the right and the left arm. And the skull. It's also the brain is preserved.
Oh my God, it's completely preserved.
All her organs, her brain and tissues are intact.
Amazing. You can see the
She is real.
I know Salafia wouldn't disappoint me.
Oh, sure.
Her preservation, all Salafia's formula. To discover Salafia's secrets, Dario returns to the archives.
I wanted to find actual documents on this, on the whole story. I think that was the right thing to do for both Salafia and Rosalia. So I just had the feeling I had to solve this.
Now there's been a breakthrough, one that will finally reveal Salafia's fabled formula. And a one-of-a-kind opportunity to see his groundbreaking method put into practice. The investigation into Sicily's 400-year history of mummification has led to this door.
Hello. Ciao. Salve.
In searching for the final piece of the puzzle explaining the Rosalia mummy, the scientists have finally located a distant relative of Salafia, Rosalia's mysterious embalmer. A great niece of Salafia's second wife, Anna Filippone has a trove of family papers. And among them, a diary written by Salafia in his own hand and filled with photographs from his career. It's an extraordinary chance to hear Salafia himself speaking from beyond the grave.
The Egyptians tried, the Capuchins tried, but no one achieved the ideal. That is, to preserve the cadaver such as it rests at the moment of death. I was able to achieve this.
And the long-lost formula is here.
The formula was basically made of formalin, zinc sulfur, alcohol, and glycerin.
Surprisingly, it doesn't contain arsenic or mercury, toxic chemicals so prevalent in 19th century embalming. But to understand how Salafia's formula produced the perfect mummy, Dario will need to make one last journey. In the US, at an anatomical research facility near Chicago, Dario will have an unusual opportunity to put Salafia's method to the test.
Salafia came here about 100 years ago, and now I'm coming here with this lost formula, and it's